I dare you to hit it.
He'll be sorry.
Boy, a bigger bat. Want the heater? I'll give it to you.
Pick up a basketball, maybe then I'll hit it.
A swing and a drive to deep right.
Clear the deck. Cannonball coming.
Left field. It is out of here.
What up? What's good? Baseball Unstitched. We are back. We got a good show for you guys today. As always, the MLB Pipeline Flax. They just dropped their new rankings, and we took a look at the risers, or their biggest risers, this week. Picked out 3 that me, you, and Jackson really, really liked and wanted to elaborate a little bit more on. We're going to talk about the Phillies, because I don't know if you heard, Flax, but the Phillies are rolling 15-5 over their last 20 games since the manager change. But there's 2 guys who are putting the entire team in their backpack and walking them offensively to the finish line at the current moment. And finally, Shea Langeliers, affectionately known on this podcast as Shea Bangeliers. We're going to talk about him and why, Flax, if the season ended today, he might be the AL MVP over a lot of names that people have loved over the last 5 to 10 years. But first, we start where we start, Flax. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. I was in Florida this weekend, house sitting for my brother. My mom and I enjoyed some nice quality time with each other in the warm Florida weather. And then I got home Sunday to rain, and it was a pretty miserable day in Denver this week. I don't know if you experienced the same thing up north. I know in Colorado it can tend to vary a little bit. But we got a ton of cold rain down here in Denver.
Yeah, we got a little bit of rain up here for sure. I don't know. My weekend was predicated around the fact that I got intentionally walked this weekend.
Yeah.
That's
Again, I
tough.
forgot to ask
Tough
you,
and
how was your
mentally.
weekend?
It wasn't bad. Wasn't bad. A lot of work around the house as I texted you about, which is not a bad thing. But pulled off a nail biter. I know you were on a plane on your way home. 12-11 win for the guys this week in dramatic fashion. We scored 8 runs in the 7th. Had to happen. Needed it. I got intentionally walked in that inning. They did not want to face me with guys on second and third with the ability to tie the game. So I don't blame them. They put me on first.
I was going to say, let me ask you this. If you were in that situation, would you have pitched
I'd put me
to
on
you?
too.
Right.
But of course, why would I pitch? Come on, I'm going to pitch to me, Flax? Come on. Oh,
To be fair, you would pitch to you. I would not.
That is actually the truth, because
Yeah.
you know I'd be like, this guy, who does he think he is?
Right.
That's funny. All right, Flax, this week in baseball, I'll start us off here. AL Player of the Week honors. One of the guys that I've been loving on over the last couple of years here, who I think's got a ton of upside. Angel Martinez for the Cleveland Guardians wins those honors this week. Martinez had 4 home runs over a 5-game stretch this week, helped the Guardians to a 5-1 record. They hit 7 home runs, Flax, in the final game of the series against Cincinnati, which is not something that you see a ton out of Cleveland Guardians lineups. Angel Martinez this week, 7 for 19, a 368 average, 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, and a 613 WOBA. Nice week for the switch hitter in Cleveland.
Yeah, I want to pull the number up, but I believe last year when he started the season in like April, May timeframe, I want to say like 50% of his hits were extra base hits. Last year, it was like the only thing he could do was hit an extra base hit. I love Angel Martinez. I love his swing. Holds a soft spot in my heart as a switch hitter more than anything. But yeah, no, I think he had like 20 hits by the end of the first 2 months, and 10 of them were either home runs or doubles. It's good to see him get that recognition this week. On the flip side, on the NL, a guy that you and I have also talked about quite a bit. Guy that I played against one time in high school, Gavin Sheets, San Diego Padres. Once again, doing damage at the plate, looking like a better hitter than he was last year during his what we would call resurgence in San Diego, being picked up as a free agent after being non-tendered by the White Sox last year. This was one of the most absurd weeks we've ever seen out of a hitter. Went 10 for 16. He walked 7 times, 4 home runs, 8 RBIs. He had a 451 WRC+. Just for those of you listening, a 100 WRC plus is league average. His was 451. He was worth 1.3 wins in a 6-game stretch as a single individual player in the lineup. Like, that is an absurd number for a singular player. He put up a full 1 WAR as a devalued defensive corner outfielder as well. Either corner outfielder or first base, it changes. Both negatively affect him, and he still put up a full F-WAR in a single 6-game stretch. So, big week for Gavin Sheets.
He's just made so many good adjustments, right? We talked about him last year as our most excited non-tendered signee, ends up making the Padres roster, not only makes the roster, but solidifies himself a potential starting spot in their lineup over the next X amount of years. Flex, we talked about it. One of the fun things about Sheets is he's a big dude, and he's got a nice, interesting move with his leg kick that kind of allows him to clear his hips a little bit more. He's toned that in really well, and he's actually able to stay on his backside long enough to make it work with off speed, which I think is a big improvement we've seen over the last 2 seasons. Hometown hitter for me here, Flax. Dalen hits Lyle. Makes this week in baseball for the first time in his career. Excited about it.
Hey.
He hit 3 home runs in front of his family in Cincinnati. He had a 2 home run game in Cincy this week. Lyle, 10 for 26, hitting .385 with 4 home runs, 10 RBIs last week. Off to a slow start this year early on, and no longer off to a slow start. The league adjusted to him. He adjusted back. Lyle looks like a long-term piece for the Nats. Of course, our favorite comp, or one of our favorite comps that we always give out. Kid looks like Michael Brantley Jr. Excited to see what the rest of his career looks like.
No triples yet this year, but I assume they are coming at some point.
They're just going over the fence this year, Flax.
Well, we always say this. You know, guys who hit, we usually say doubles because guys don't just run for triples. Same thing about Corbin Carroll. A lot of triples turned into home runs because they just fly a little bit further as these guys get older. Also on this week in baseball, Jake Burger, really good week for the Texas Rangers. First baseman, Burger, finding his way back after an injury, rehab assignment, back in the everyday role, and this Texas Rangers lineup is benefiting majorly from it. Went 8 for 19 this week, 2 home runs, a double, 549 weighted on base average, and a 259 WRC plus. The biggest thing is that he gives protection to other guys in that lineup that need it. Corey Seager, if you don't have to pitch to him, will never see anything to hit. If a guy like Jake Burger also shows up and starts hitting the ball, the two of them can do a lot of damage around some better players in that lineup that can get on base and make it worth that offense's while.
Yeah, really struggled in year 1 for Texas. I think they're extremely happy to see that he's starting to look like himself at the plate. That bat is essential for that team to go deep into the season and potentially deep into the playoffs if they can get themselves there. Flax, the only pitcher on This Week in Baseball this week is Zach Wheeler. We will talk about him a little bit more later in the podcast when we get to the Phillies section here. But Zach looks like, he looks like Zach Wheeler. Turns out he's still elite. He's still great, coming off of an injury that kept him out most of last year. The Phillies were 5-1 this week, and since Zach Wheeler has been able to get back on the mound, which is as of April 25th. He's started 5 games. The Phillies are 5-0 in games that Zach Wheeler dons the mound this week. 14.1 innings and a .63 ERA, 2 quality starts, 12 Ks, 1 run giving up. So he's back. We're just letting everybody know.
What was his injury last year? Was a blood clot, right? Towards the end of the season? I mean, that's the timeline.
I feel like I should know this.
The timeline, he had thoracic outlet decompression surgery because of a blood clot. Like, the timeline with which he's made his way back and been impactful since last August when this happened, and that was a huge blow for that team going into the postseason and going into the last month of the year. The fact that he's picked up right where he left off, I think, is what's most impressive. Because guys don't generally do that after this injury, especially at his age.
To boot, I think it's a reminder that thoracic outlet surgery has been a killer for a lot of guys from a career perspective. We've seen it hurt many pitchers across the board, and it's really hard to come back from, right? We've seen it just devalue what guys can do. So it's nice to see him just looking like himself, and it's really, really impressive at the current moment. The Phillies needed it, right? 15-5 over the last 20 games since moving on for the manager. The guys on the field are putting it up. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the pod. But Flax, getting to topic number 1 of the day, MLB.com updated their top prospect pipeline. Just happens to be the one that we have access to, you have access to for free. So we're going to roll with this. They had 10 prospects, Flax, rise between 16 and 44 places up their top 100 board when they updated it last week. You, me, and Jackson all picked one of those risers to highlight that we want people to know more about. And we're going to start on your pick, which I absolutely love, in Caleb Bonham, a shortstop third baseman for the Chicago White Sox.
Well, so I texted you a week ago before this got updated, and I said, Caleb Bonham is a beast. I'm going to be putting money on the White Sox to lead the league in home runs as a team in 2027. He is a reason why. I don't know that he's going to get there by 2027, especially with the talent that they have across the board and are probably going to be bringing in. But he is going to fit really well with this team, the way that he swings the bat. He's 6'1", 195, hits from the right side, throws from the right side, obviously. He was a second-round draft pick in 2024. He's risen now, 31 spots in the latest pipeline, from 46 all the way to 15. This is why. Slashing 259, 402, 633. He's got 14 home runs, 34 RBIs, and 10 doubles to go with it. 24 extra base hits already in a 38-game stretch to start the season. He only hits extra base hits, which is absurd. It reminds me a lot of like an early Zach Geloff, only extra base hits. He's a high school. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this kid, right? Former Michigan high school Gatorade Player of the Year. The raw power on him is absolutely outstanding. You're talking about a guy who gets every single bit out of his 6'1", 195 frame. He's also only 20 years old, so we'll continue to expect him in a pro weight room to add in the right places is probably the best way to put it. He's got an advanced feel to hit. This is a guy who across the board from scouting grades is considered over a 50 in all 5 tool metrics, which tells you what people already think about him within the league. But he's showing us that there's more to it, right? This is a guy who, again, at a level that is right probably where he should be. He's maybe even a little bit from an age perspective young for the level, just absolutely demolishing baseballs. He had 46 extra base hits over 107 games last year in A-ball, and we were all extremely impressed with what the 19-year-old did. Now at 20 years old, 24 extra base hits in 38 games at high A, he's already proving that he shouldn't be at this level. The mix of bat to ball and pop should play throughout the rest of his time in the minors, and I think it's something that we're seeing where this kid truly does have perennial all-star talent. The White Sox only question with him is just going to be how you fit him into a mix of excellent young talent across the board. They have log-jammed themselves at shortstop, which we know historically is a good thing to do because you expect, or if you're the Padres in these cases, you expect shortstops to be able to play any position across the board due to their athleticism. But good defender, probably ends up at third base. Solid speed across the board, soft hands, good arm. He's the full package is really what this comes down to, Flax. And only at 20 years old, there's a lot of room here for this kid.
Well, and I think you'll see him get innings at Double-A this year, only for the fact that once some of these younger guys get drafted, the likelihood is that they'll go play some games at high A, and there's really no sense in having him there with those guys there when he could move up and start playing at a higher level if he continues to hit the ball the way that he's hitting the ball. Because if he can hit for power like this at a lower level and the way that the White Sox develop, which is try and maintain the same message from level to level, you know that all you're doing is giving him an opportunity to go up against a tougher situation with the same focused coaching alongside it. So how much better can he do? How much better can he get in a situation that tests his abilities just a little bit more? I like him mainly because I like the organization that he's in, right? There are organizations we can't say the same about right now. There are organizations that in the past couple of years we wouldn't have said that about, but we do now say that about. I would classify the White Sox as being in that group because of what they've shown with the ability to get Miguel Vargas where he needs to be as a third baseman, to get Colson Montgomery where he needs to be as a hitter, because they've got guys like Chase Mydroth in the organization, because they've got younger guys underneath them like Jacob Gonzalez, who's playing really well at the same time, right? It's making you understand that it's not by accident. So I like Caleb Bonham a lot. He's 20 years old. There's a ton of upside. It's already showing from a value perspective, and he's doing it alongside some other really good players and some, really high talent in that organization.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see him throughout the rest of the year. Double-A ball is where we start to see a true shift in stuff from a pitching perspective, right? It tends to be where, at the minor league level, the absolute toughest pitchers that you're going to see consistently reside, or at least for the longest period of time that they'll spend in the minors in most cases. So it will be fun to see how Bonham produces at that level. If he continues to hit this way when he does get to Double-A, expect Bonham to be a top 10 prospect, no questions asked, by the end of the year. Flax, let's go to Jackson's pick. For those of you who don't know and are surprised for some reason, Jackson picked a pitcher. And we're glad he did because one of us had to. But Flax, he picked a LSU alum, a UC San Diego former player, and Anthony Ianson, who was drafted by the Boston Red Sox last year, a third-round pick. We thought the third round was a little bit low for him. We had him rated pretty high on our board just from a standpoint of the fact that he's a competitor. He had a ton of polish and overall pitchability from what we saw. However, with inside the league, it sounded like the big reason he fell was the fact that the polish was the bigger question, and if his stuff would be able to consistently play at the highest level. Ianson has shown us that all of the question marks were not necessary at the end of the day. He has moved now, Flax, from the 97th overall prospect on their board to the 72nd. Through high A and Double-A, he's had 6 games started this year. Hold your pants on this one. 24.1 innings pitched, a .74 ERA, a .58 whip, 38 Ks to 4 walks. He's given up a total of 10 hits in 6 games started at any minor league level this year. The man has been excellent. I'm happy to go into his arsenal and his stuff here for everybody in a moment, but your thoughts on Ianson early in the season?
So here's what I'll say, because I went through the game log as well of those 6 starts, and everything looks good, right? He's getting ahead. He's throwing a lot of strikes, not walking a lot of guys. He's only given up 2 home runs. This is pro ball. It happens. My bigger thing here is he's really only gotten stretched out to 5 innings one time. Everything else is 3 innings to 4 innings. My guess is that is just the plan that he is on. And to be honest with you, I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. It drives me crazy. Because what are you going to do? You're going to give him a month of 4 to 5 starts to try and stretch out when you're ready to start moving him into a potential future big league role. This is a guy who just threw a ton of innings at the collegiate level before getting drafted. This isn't a high schooler that you're trying to manage at 18 years old. He's 21. You'd like him, if he's throwing like this, to be a big leaguer at 23. So
or sooner,
right? So, you've already got him in Double-A. He's already shown that he can throw a ton of strikes, get a lot of guys out, get a ton of swing and miss in that time period. Why are we only throwing 4 innings per start? Why aren't we minimum trying to get through 5? I'm okay if you want to set a maximum and say you're not throwing past 7. I don't care if you're at 65 pitches. But why are we throwing 3 innings at a time? Unless the goal is that he's not going to be a starter when he gets to the big league level. Because he's going to hurt himself. And that's what drives me nuts when you see pitching talent like this and then the way that it is managed. Because what he has, we've talked about this, we talked about him, we were talking about pre-draft stuff. He's got a good pitch mix. It's starting to develop. The fastball had the opportunity to be explosive in college, but wasn't used that way. To me, I viewed that more as, understanding how to use stuff to get through as many innings as possible. Now he's sitting 95, 96 and touching 100. The likelihood is he's doing it because he's letting it eat for 3 innings because he knows he's not going to go any further than that. So now the goal is that he's going to keep 95, 96 up all the way through until he gets into the big leagues and is asked to go 6 to 7 innings. How is that arsenal going to change? How is the arsenal going to be managed? And then the last thing I'll say here, that 4-pitch arsenal is a 4-seam fastball, a slider, a curveball, and a splitter. I can guarantee it's going to turn into a 5-pitch arsenal by the end of next spring training because a cutter will be added into this arsenal in the Red Sox organization unless Andrew Bailey and Craig Breslow are no longer there in spring training. I'm curious to see the effect that has on him because I'm of the belief with pitchers that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't know that he needs a cutter. I don't know that the shape of his slider calls for a cutter to be added. If his glove side pitch that he uses to get guys out is the curveball and the slider is more of a get me over and a pitch that he leverages to get in on lefties and off the plate on righties, is a cutter necessary? Or is it doing its job as a bridge pitch between the fastball and the curveball?
The irony is that the only reason he doesn't already have a cutter is because he threw a changeup in college and he's now throwing a splitter. So, in my personal opinion, the thought process was to focus on that offering prior to giving him one. I'm not saying he needs a cutter, but we know that Bailey and Breslow basically give everybody a cutter the moment you end up a Boston Red Sox. That's part of their strategy, part of their plan. I genuinely do agree with you in this scenario that I just don't know if that's needed with his pitch mix. The biggest thing that we're seeing here, though, is that uptick in velocity across the board on his fastball. The carry, a.k.a. the ride on his fastball, has also improved and increased. So it's really interesting to see how long that keeps up and kind of where Flax is going with this is even if it does stay, can he throw 5 to 6 innings and continue to have this level of juice, and can he sit with that fastball at 95 to 96? Regardless of that, Flax, this is a guy who has 2+ pitches in both of his breakers. Right? The slider is extremely tight with good downward motion. It's going to get a ton of whiffs across the board, and we're seeing it get a ton of whiffs. The curveball, a very deep breaking, steep breaking curveball is the way that I put it. Another pitch that grades out plus. What I find so interesting about Ianson is that his ability to throw both the curveball and slider, and what he showed us with both of those pitches in college is those being pretty heavily utilized primary offerings for him, is he has feel. He can control and throw both of those pitches for a strike. So how do we make sure that his mix every time he comes into the game is not only tailored to the data we're seeing about the other team, but also allows him to utilize those 2 pitches to the highest efficiency? Again, I don't really disagree with you with the shape of his slider. I don't know that you have to have a cutter. We'll leave that alone because, frankly, it's not going to be our decision whether or not he adds that. But his stuff...
It's good of you to recognize that.
Better. His stuff is better than I think a lot of people realized and recognized. And what I would remind you is this is also the difference of a full off season where your life is baseball for a highly, highly talented arm like this who is healthy, and a pro organization getting their hands on the guy that actually has so much of his bar left to fill. The question here on out is how do you bring Ianson to the highest level, and does he end up being a starter, which in my opinion, this is a guy who could be a 2 to 4 in your rotation if he hit his peak, or does he end up being an arm that reverts down to the high leverage piece because he needs the fastball to sit at higher velos with that ride to make the rest of his arsenal as effective as it needs to be at the highest level? Can't answer that question yet, but I can promise you within the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have our answer. Flax, my guy.
Let me hear it.
My guy. My guy's trying to level up, dude. That's really what I got for you here. Johnny Level, a shortstop in the San Francisco Giants organization. He was an international signing for them in 2024.
Yep.
Level is another switch hitter, near and dear to Flax's heart. This kid is 5'8", 186. Again, switch hitter. He has been solid for them at the A-ball level this year. This is his 3rd year of professional baseball. getting himself to the A-ball level. He struggled a little bit after destroying the ball in rookie ball in 2025. Slow start to his A-ball, start to his career. This year in 2026, Flax, 319, 386, 525, 5 home runs already this year, 12 doubles, 1 triple, and 10 stolen bases. This kid has every tool you would be looking for, in my opinion, with good feel to hit from both sides of the plate. We both know how hard that is to find from 19-year-olds at lower levels. He's got not only a smooth, compact swing from both sides, but a swing that is repeatable, that he also can generate a ton of pop out of. This is a kid who at the highest level, I think one day, is going to be a 20-plus home run guy with the ability to play anywhere in the infield and potentially anywhere in the outfield, simply because the Giants are another one of those teams that heavily drafts shortstops and has the same type of logjam as teams who have that overall strategy. I love Johnny Level. I'm excited to see the 19-year-old get an opportunity at high A ball sooner than later.
When I watch his swing from both sides, it's one of the more consistent, I guess, from right to left. You don't see that very often. The only thing I do notice is that there's a little bit more of a hitch in his timing right-handed. But he looks very much to me like a switch-hitting Jose Altuve. And that's the nature of being a 5'8" guy, of like you have to use your whole body to do what everybody else is doing at the professional level. If that's your game, right? Good bat to ball, show out some power when the pitcher misses. When I watch the swing, like you said, very compact, through the zone, explosive once he gets through the hitting zone, through the hitting area, and makes contact. The thing that I think, I wonder for him is if his swing will get a little bit simpler and potentially a little bit less powerful early on when and if he makes it to the big leagues, only because his bat to ball and high defensive skill is what will more than likely propel him to stay. And then once he solidifies, he'll get an opportunity to reopen that path for power. It's just a hard thing to do if you want to get to the big league, because if you're not showing power and somebody else from one side of the plate shows power and a competency at a defensive position, they'll get an opportunity before you. Just is the way it is. You can always platoon a young guy rather than a heavily defensive switch hitter. But his bat to ball right now is showing, as hot as he's hitting, he has the makeup to continue growing these levels. He's still so early on in his career. It'll be interesting to see the progression. The one thing that probably won't change is the height. He'll probably put on a little bit more muscle. I'm not one to sit here and say that guys are too short to play professional baseball. No way, shape, or form. It's just the curiosity of how his game will evolve.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me about Level and why him rising up from the 76 spot for MLB Pipeline to the 64 spot was a big note for me is kind of the fact that he was known to be a better right-handed hitter prior to this season. Watching the fact that this year, not only is he putting up better pop numbers from the left side, he's been a overall better hitter. Flex, you and I both know as a switch hitter, you're going to face more righties. Welcome to it. There's more righties out there. It's how it works. So what I'm seeing from his growth, and I really like to see that as a 19-year-old professional, that's big. This guy, like I mentioned, can be an overarching five-tool type player from the Giants down the road. One of the biggest misses for him, in my opinion, and we see this all the time, is everybody in the minors tends to be a little bit more aggressive if you have an above-average run tool. Level is no exception to that statement. He has not, however, Flax, breached the 74% or better threshold. For those of you who don't know that, who do not know what that is essentially from a runs perspective with how much a stolen base is worth. If you are not stealing 3 out of every 4 bags, there's a good argument that you just actually shouldn't steal at all. It's just how it works out. It basically is nullified from a run perspective if you're not at least 3 out of 4. He has not hit that mark his first 2 years. This year in 2026, he's 10 of 12. Hitting that mark from a stolen base perspective. It is really nice to see that his feel to steal bases also seems to be coming along as well. As a guy like this continues to grow, that's going to be really important. He is a more than good enough defender to stay at short, as mentioned. However, we might see him somewhere else.
And I just want to say this, because while you were talking, I was watching a little bit of his video from 2025 to 2026. The swing is already becoming more simplified on the left-hand side, which is probably what has boosted the contact. And because he's so quick to the ball, guys throw hard and he hits the barrel, he's producing power because power comes from a lot of different variables. But his leg kick has already shortened a little bit. His timing is a little bit smoother. Everything is a little bit more fluid on the left-hand side, as it usually is for hitters, left-handed versus right-handed.
Yeah, well, it was going to have to be, right, for him to keep climbing, so it's good to know that you're seeing it as well. Look
out for a tweet tomorrow. I'm sure I'll do a breakdown, because now it's in my brain.
Tweet how he's leveled up, Flax. I can't say it enough.
Nice.
Final note here. We actually had ourselves an honorable mention because this guy rose up MLB Pipeline's draft board, but like there really wasn't very far for him to go. Seth Hernandez just simply might be the best player in all of minor league baseball at the current moment, and I think he legitimately has an argument for it. The 19-year-old who was drafted 6th overall by the Pirates last year, we considered the most polished high school pitcher we had ever seen. A guy coming out of high school with 5 legitimate pitches that he could control. They were all thrown at pro-level velos. I mean, what Seth Hernandez possesses is amazing. And what is he doing in his first taste of professional baseball? Proving everybody who saw this absolutely correct. 7 starts between A-ball and high A-ball. Oh, yeah, because they already promoted him once. 33 innings, a .82 ERA, a .73 whip, 57 Ks to 11 walks. Seth Hernandez, you're a dog. We just got to give you the shout out here, man. But there wasn't anywhere for you to move up, so you weren't part of our pool of people to pick from.
It is fascinating, people who don't watch the game a lot or don't watch the minor leaguers could look at a Seth Hernandez and go, oh, that's different. That's when you know, right? And I think it doesn't happen a lot with high schoolers, which is why it's worth talking about. Everybody saw Paul Skeens in college. You know he's in the SEC. You know he's playing for LSU. He dominates. Great. We know that's a different level of baseball. It's just when you see a high schooler step into the minor leagues and just so comfortably repeat the motion over and over and over again like it's just a backyard baseball game.
Scorched earth.
It's crazy.
Scorched earth. He's given up 13 hits in his first, 33 total innings as a pro? Get out of here. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy. So, Flax, let's move ourselves on here to topic number 2 of the day. We've mentioned it a couple times. The Philadelphia Phillies are hot. 15-5 since Don Mattingly took over as the manager of that team. They are now over 500. 24-23. Who would have thought that 20 games ago? But here we are. And Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper are like your best buddy who's better than you at a video game. He said, get in my backpack, and they are pulling this offense all the way across the finish line to help the Phillies in this 20-game run. Flax, I want to throw some numbers at you here because this is where this gets entertaining. The Phillies, over the last 20 games, have scored 99 runs. They've recorded 97 runs batted in, and they've hit 28 home runs and 68 extra base hits. Here is the percentage of which Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber are responsible for those numbers. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber have scored 32 of their 99 runs in this span. That is a grand total of 32.3%. They have batted in 47 of their 97 runs batted in. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber represent 48.5% of the RBIs that were scored during this 20-game stretch. Combined, they have 18 home runs. They have 64.3% of the Phillies' home runs throughout this 20-game stretch. And finally, they have 26 extra base hits of the 63 that the Phillies had over the last 20 games. That is a 41.5% total of their extra base hits. So the Kyle Schwarbers and the Bryce Harpers are just making sure that Philadelphia has an opportunity down the stretch because this 20-game span has erased the slow start that the Philadelphia Phillies were on.
18 of the 28 home runs is so laughably ridiculous.
It's absurd.
And
it's absurd.
Like the other day, Harper just off of Paul Skeens.
Yeah.
I mean, those two are just taking a stroll through the park right now. I mean, they just don't, like, nothing is phasing them. They're so locked in. It's crazy. 32% of the runs scored.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
not only the home runs, but they're on base. That's two times the amount of home runs they've hit. No,
Yep.
it's close. It's close. A little bit less.
It's 4 less, but
I'm not a
your
math guy.
Your math was close. That's all right. That's why I'm here. So let's talk about what these guys have done since then individually. Kyle Schwarber throughout this span, and buckle yourself up for this one because Kyle Schwarber has gone scorched earth and is officially the president of Nuketown, USA at the current moment. 22 of 79 with 12 home runs, Flax. 12 home runs.
That's how you get to 20 pretty quick.
During this 20-game stretch, 12 home runs, 4 doubles, 31 RBIs. For anybody counting, that means that 16 of Kyle Schwarber's 22 hits over the last 20 games are for extra bases. Kyle Schwarber knows what he does well, ladies and gentlemen. That's hit the ball out of the yard. And what he's proving to us is he knows. And it's very obvious. This guy is on a 50 home run plus pace again. Schwarber has been in a really good spot throughout this time period. We, as a podcast, do not prescribe that everybody needs to focus on pull air rate, but when you got guys like Kyle Schwarber, this is the perfect example of somebody who should.
Yes.
And Kyle Schwarber at the current moment is at his highest ever pull air rate of his career at 32.4%. We love to see it because it makes sense for his profile and it makes sense for what he's looking to do. But the best one, Flax, is the fact that Kyle Schwarber is hitting and are swinging at meatballs. Meatballs, for those of you who don't know, that's a legitimate baseball stat. That's when you look at the 9 quadrants of the strike zone, that little middle one, right there in the middle pitch, that's when the ball ends up in that spot. Kyle Schwarber is swinging 7% more of the time at meatballs so far this year. And I'm assuming they're just leaving the yard because I don't know where else they'd go.
You know what's funny? He's hit a lot of his home runs have been solo home runs. And I do wonder with how good Harper's been and how on base guys like Brandon Marsh have been, like how often when he's just up there and there's nobody on base, teams are much more apt to try and put a ball by him rather than put him on base because of the other guys that are in the lineup right now. And just like in this stretch, and he is not missing. He's just not missing over the plate.
And the funny part about Kyle Schwarber is how he generates you runs is blatantly obvious, right? He hits the ball over the wall. So the funnier part, though, is the easiest way to score a run when nobody's on base is to do what, Flax? It's almost the only way.
Yeah.
Hit the ball over the fence. Because Kyle Schwarber is not legging out an inside the park home run. He'll tell you that himself.
No.
So, with nobody on base, Kyle Schwarber, at the end of the day, is still the right guy to have up because he can still generate runs in those scenarios at a consistent and regular rate. Again, 12 home runs over the last 20 games is absurd. How he has not won in this span or stretch a player of the week, we will never know, nor will we question. Let's go to the other guy here, Flax. Bryce Harper, a.k.a. the guy Dave Dombrowski said wasn't elite. Turns out, as we've said every single time he gets brought up on this podcast, he is still elite. 23 of 73 with a .315 average over these 20 games, 6 home runs, 4 doubles, 16 RBIs, 15 runs scored, a 16-13 K-to-walk ratio. And as we noted a couple weeks ago, he had a week during this span where he did not strike out at all. Bryce is friggin' hot right now. And I am so happy to see it, as much as it hurts me that it's in Philadelphia red and not Washington red.
You know what's interesting? Because I was just looking at this for Schwarber and for Harper. They're not swinging an absurd amount in the zone. But when they are swinging in the zone, their zone contact rate is really high. and they're doing damage, quite obviously, on those pitches that they're swinging at in the zone, what it tells me is that they're up there with a plan. And I don't know whether or not Don Mattingly has an impact on this, if Rob Thompson not being there has an impact on this, if the mentality has changed, or if these guys just finally sat down as a group and it all happened to coincide at once to say, okay, we have the talent. We have no problem going 15-5 in a 20-game stretch and getting back into our season. But if we're going to do that, we need to be a little bit better about how we're taking an approach to the game, how we're taking an approach to the at-bat. And listen, it's not working for everyone. Trey Turner, not really playing to his best level. Alec Boehm, kind of what we expect from him. Bryson Stott, we'd love to see it better. JT Realmuto, kind of being what we expected him to be. Just a stable backstop who offensively is starting to lose his step. And Justin Crawford doing a good job of turning the lineup over and playing an above average, league player up to this point. And I think when you pull all that together, this wouldn't happen the way that it's happening unless Harper and Schwarber were playing absolutely nuts. But the approach has changed. Like the focus of what they're trying to do has clearly changed. And there's no question about it. And not only has it changed, but they're taking advantage of doing what they want to do with that approach. The next 20 games will be where it's interesting to see how teams treat this lineup. Because I would rather walk Schwarber and Harper every time, let Alec Boehm be the guy that has to beat me every time, than let the two of them keep hitting solo home runs.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with you, right? Harper's strikeout rate is down 4 points against its career average. He normally strikes out around 21.5% of the time. He's striking out 17.3% of the time. That, solidifies what you're talking about. The approach seems to be a little bit different this year. As you mentioned already, his in-zone contact rate is very high. His whiff rate is also down to start the year, which you'd expect when you see the K rate move down as well, of course. But I think what we're watching is a plan, adjustments being made, and then Harper and Schwarber being in flow states at the exact same time, right? Because there does get to a point with guys at this level where right now you're probably better off not pitching to either of them if you'd like to win the game, right? Like you said, anybody else in the lineup beat me. Because right now, if I throw it over the plate, these two are going to beat me. And that's what they're both showing at the current moment. So, interested to see where this goes. They've both been elite bats for Philly, especially over the last X amount of games. Really curious to see how the rest of this year goes. If you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan, the thought process here is simple. You got to hope that your two veteran leaders kind of play and act as a spark plug for the rest of this lineup getting to go. Because people will eventually do what Flax said, which is not give them anything to hit and force everybody else to beat you. Shout out real... Go ahead.
I was going to say, you know what Philly sports radio is probably sounds like right now? They still suck. They're not that good. It'll fall apart. They're the only two guys hitting. Maybe just be happy. Maybe just be happy that you're over 500 because it could be a whole lot worse. You could have done what the Red Sox did and just continued playing bad baseball. So, for the Phillies fans out there, appreciate what you got.
Quick shout out, as Flax mentioned, the one guy getting on base for them is Brandon Marsh on a regular basis. Scored 14 runs over this 20-game stretch, 25 of 68 as he hit 368, 5 doubles, and a triple. Brandon Marsh has been helping the two leaders of this team make sure that somebody is on base for them when they swing. Go ahead.
And shout out to Warmonger on Twitter.
Good dude.
Because he has put it out there numerous times. Brandon Marsh career is number 2 all time in batting average on balls in play, behind the Ty Cobb. So
what?
Yes, Brandon Marsh, when his contact rate is high, will be on base a ton. When Brandon Marsh's contact rates are bad, he will probably be of no benefit to you in the lineup.
All right, well, we'll go retweet that one 12 times for you. Don't worry, you'll see it on your feed tomorrow. Only one Flax that I want to note before we get to Jackson's bullpen here. Zach Wheeler's back. He's healthy. He looks really good. Only thing I wanted you to dive into for the people real quick is the fact that he stepped on the mound, 5-0 as he's on the mound. You talked a little bit earlier about how Zach Wheeler is helping stabilize this rotation. If we could get a 1-minute excerpt on Zach Wheeler's stabilization of the Phillies rotation.
Yeah, it's really simple. You have 5 starters. Generally, if you only have 2 good starters, that means in a week of 5 games, you're only, guarantee is the wrong word, but you're only guaranteeing yourself 2 really, really solid chances at a win. Jesus Luzardo, Christopher Sanchez. And for the most part, they've been what we expected them to be. Luzardo's probably got a little bit of room for growth this year, but it also just may be a leveling of water. Then the question marks were Nola and Painter. Well, they're always going to be question marks until they're not. So when you have a 5th guy that is kind of a rotation of people or someone trying to step in for Wheeler, it becomes a situation where every 5 games, guaranteed 2 good opportunities, question mark for 3 opportunities. When you flip that around and you have 3 good opportunities, you have a really good chance to go 4-1 on the week. 4-1 on the week over a 20-game stretch would be 16-4. Sometimes you go 3-2 instead of going 4-1, and you go 15-5 in a 20-game stretch. Zach Wheeler has been able to stabilize the rotation by giving them a 3rd opportunity, good opportunity for a win every 5 days with Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo, and the team is hitting well enough, or Schwarber and Harper hitting well enough, to give you an extra win on top of those other 2 potential arms or whoever is throwing. I think Andrew Painter might be hurt, by the way, when I say that.
For everybody who's curious, by the way, of why the timing of this is really good, Zach Wheeler's first start, April 25th. Rob Thompson, unfortunately, fired April 28th. Do the math yourself. There it is. So, Flax, let's move people to their favorite and our favorite segment of the day, and that's Jackson's bullpen. Jackson.
Yeah.
Teach us something new.
Boys, welcome back to another episode of Jackson's Bullpen. We got a good one today. I was looking at the ERA rankings, and not sure if y'all know, Christopher Sanchez is having a really good year. This guy's been, I would say, top 2 pitcher in baseball, him and Cam Schlittler. I think he's right now pretty clearly the NL Cy Young odds-on favorite. Sat so far this year, 10 starts, 64 innings, 1.82 ERA, 1.91 FIP, 59% ground ball rate, 30% K, 5% walk. Gets a lot of chase, gets a lot of whiff. The thing that's interesting with him in discussion is he's a 3-pitch pitcher, and he has been his entire career. We've kind of in an era now where we're seeing guys throw a lot of different pitches. We're looking at Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens is a guy who's throwing 7-8 pitches. We love Paul Skeens around here. Christopher Sanchez is doing a different way. He debuted in 2021. Came in with a sinker, changeup, and slider. In his career, he has not thrown another pitch but those 3 types of pitches. Has just thrown that. The only main adjustment he has made in his career is he's dropped his arm slot down around 10 degrees from 40 to 30 to get more depth. But I just think it's interesting. This is a 3-pitch guy, and we don't really see that anymore. We've guys typically have trouble throwing with just 3 pitches, and he does it by tunneling. The sinker and the changeup look so similar. Both have a lot of depth. The changeup just acts a little bit slower, and it makes it tough for hitters to even see it, even though they know it's coming. When a righty gets in the box against him, he throws 45% changeups, 38% sinkers. You know you're seeing those 2 pitches majority of the time, and righties still can't do anything about it because it's so tough to pick up on the ball. And then the lefties gets a sinker in on the hands, throws a slider away, and it's tough for them to cheat to it. He's basically going out there and just throwing 3 pitches. The hitters know exactly what's coming. They can try to ambush a pitch, and guys can't see it against them. The 3-pitch arsenal also allows him to kind of be more specific and have better command because he's just throwing 3 pitches. We sometimes see guys with a lot of pitches. Sometimes some of them don't have great command, and he has to just go back to a fastball. His 3-pitch command allows him to be able to have really good command and keep the walk rate down. And also the drop of the arm slot has also kept his ground ball rate really low because he gets a lot of depth on this stuff. I mean, Sanchez is awesome. I think there's a good chance he makes a run at NL Cy Young. I think he finished top 3 to 4 last year, but awesome pitcher.
I thought he had a chance at it last year, but obviously Paul Skeens is Paul Skeens.
I think great one to bring up, too. When you look at this, and we can relate this back to the playing experience that a lot of people who have listened to this podcast may have had who maybe didn't play even at the college level. When you're in high school, when you're younger, and you have a guy who throws 2 to 3 pitches, but then let's say the better guy ends up starting the next game immediately following, and he actually can at bare minimum throw 4 to 5 pitches, it makes it a lot harder for any hitter in the box because you have simply more to think about. You have simply more to keep in mind. Christopher Sanchez's changeup is what I like to call the Steven Strasburg type changeup. He could tell you he was throwing it before he threw it, and you still probably don't have much of a chance. But what's so interesting is the fact that his sinker plays so well against right-handed hitters. Why is that? The problem with sinkers against opposite-handed hitters of how you throw is the fact that sinkers are hard and they run back towards the barrel, right? The miss on sinkers to lefty to righty, righty to lefty, has to be a little bit smaller. His changeup is so friggin' good that it neutralizes that effect for hitters because you're so in between on 2 pitches that look identical. One of them, the floor just simply drops out on a couple feet away from you, that there's nothing you can do about it. His mix is excellent in the way they use it, as you mentioned with his sequencing and as you mentioned with his tunneling, is exactly why his Elite 3 offerings has been so good.
Well, it's fascinating, too, because, Ryan, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like, a guy that you know is heavy sinker, you're trying to get underneath the baseball, right? It's not like something we talk about a lot as hitters, but specifically for a sinker, you're trying really hard to make sure it's not coming down into the bottom of your barrel. And when a guy like him throws the pitches that he throws and still consistently gets the success he does on a pitch like that, it tells you that it's getting bad swings, not comfortable swings. And I think that's what the tunneling does more than anything. The fact that it's very Chris Sale-esque, right? The comfort to throw 3+ pitches the way that he wants, in the sequence that he wants, when he wants, to righties and lefties just the same, is what makes it so impressive. The fact that he consistently does it and people can't just adjust because he's not just doing it the same way over and over again. I'm glad you brought him up, Jackson, because he's a guy that I could talk about for a long time. I think he is one of the better arms in baseball.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just to reemphasize that, like, I do a lot of scouting stuff for ETSU, and if I was scouting a guy that looked like this, my eyes would light up. I'm seeing 3 pitches. I think we can hit him, especially with the righties. Everything's going away from you. You can stay on it. And just the fact that he's able to go up there with just the 3 pitches, basically just 2 to each side, and still keep hitters off balance is just absolutely crazy to me that he's able to continue to do that.
Love it, dude. Good pick, as always. We're coming out of the bullpen from Jackson's bullpen today. You know we love that.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me on this week. Boys, let's have a good rest of the episode.
All right. That was Jackson's bullpen. I hope you learned something. I know we learned something. Jackson, we appreciate you as always. Flax, final topic of the day is one that's just meant to be a little bit fun for everybody, and that's Shea Langeliers and why he might be currently the AL MVP, and especially if this was the COVID season, because we'd be right around the game mark if he done. I got him. See that? See that? Correlation. Shea Langeliers has showed us last year at the end of the year that he was more than just your very good defensive catcher with a little bit of offensive upside. He went on an absolute home run tear at the end of the year and was a big reason why the Athletics beat up on teams that people thought they shouldn't have down the stretch. The Athletics are now leading the AL West, and they look like a really strong contender to win that division with the young roster. And what Langeliers is doing for them, not only offensively but defensively, has been huge. And why I think today, Flax, I can tell you that he might deserve AL MVP honors if we finish today. And here's why. His AL hitting ranks, Flax, he is first in batting average, hitting .337. Not something that is common at all from somebody behind the plate. He's second in all of the AL in WAR at 2.6 WAR, only beaten by Bobby Witt Jr., who's put up a 3.0 WAR to this point in time. He is third in the AL in WRC Plus at 176, behind Ben Rice, who is the leader, at 194. He's third in WOBA at 434, Behind the leader once again, Ben Rice at 454. He's third in slugging at 609. Behind, you guessed it, Flax, Ben Rice at 671. And finally, he's currently seventh in the home run race in the AL at 12. Munetaka Murakami at 17. Bet you weren't expecting that as the home run leader.
Can I say this?
Please.
Before you even get to his defensive stats?
Yeah.
I think you might have just told me that Ben Rice should be the MVP.
You know why? You know why I didn't? Because Ben Rice plays what position and doesn't hit against who, Flax?
He doesn't hit against lefties. Well, that's not true. He does now.
He doesn't hit as much against lefties.
He didn't get to hit as much against lefties early in the season, and he plays first base. But to be fair, he could be a catcher.
He plays first base and splits a lot of his time
DHing.
In DHing.
Yeah.
Right. Let's stop, right?
And as Jack says, DHs shouldn't win MVPs.
There you go. So, is Ben Rice probably the other person we should talk about in this scenario? Absolutely, Flax. You caught me red-handed in the cookie jar. But let me tell you something here. One pass ball so far this year from Shea Langeliers with the legitimate fielding percentage behind the plate of .997. He is 8 for 28 throwing out runners. However, you know as well as I do, there's only so much a catcher controls in those opportunities and situations. We're looking at a guy who is tied for second in average pop time to second base, so we know Langeliers has an absolute cannon and is doing whatever he can, as most stolen bases at the big league level are not on the catcher. And finally, he is the only catcher in baseball that is qualified who's started 2 double plays.
Can I say this?
Concern, by the way.
No.
The double plays was totally what you were worried about.
No, not at all. Can I also say this on his behalf?
Please.
This is not like an early season really good stretch. Dating back to the beginning of the second half last season, only one other player in baseball has a higher wins above replacement than Shea Langeliers, and it's Bobby Witt Jr. Who's Bobby Witt Jr.? What else are you going to do? But his slash line since July 17th of 2025, 332, 379, 634 slug. It's a 176 WRC plus. 7% walk rate, 20% strikeout rate. He has 31 home runs in that time. It is good for 5th best behind Schwarber, Judge, Caminero, and Colson Montgomery.
Ooh,
I mean,
Colson Montgomery in there.
But like, you start piecing these things together, and this is for a catcher. This is a guy who has to squat behind the plate every single game. To keep up with that level of production year in and year out is extremely difficult. And I think you're starting to even see it with Cal Raleigh. After last year's stretch coming into this season, your body wears down really quick catching as many games as he does. He's caught more games, I think, than anybody over the last 3 seasons. I think when you start looking at Shea Langeliers, this start to this year will probably be his best chance at an MVP over the next 5, just because of the position that he plays.
Yeah, totally agree. And my third and final argument for Langeliers here is what he's actually doing for the pitching staff, right? And one of the ways that we, in my opinion, or I tend to track this, is looking at the ERAs of the pitching staffs year over year to understand if they have consistency in a backstop, what that is doing for them. Last year, the Athletics team ERA was a 4.70 to start this year. They're down to a 4.32. More importantly is obviously Langeliers is paired up with starters on a regular basis who he needs to know as well as humanly possible to help them through starts, because most guys don't have all their pitches when they go out there on any given day. Starter ERAs, Flax, are down from a 4.85 to a 4.17. That's 3/4 of a run, right? And again, I'm not here to say the guy behind the plate has all to do with what's going on there, but he certainly affects it because he's your pitcher's quarterback on every play. It's just what it is. We know they're not calling pitches from the dugout. It's Langeliers, the pitcher, and the pitching coach, and whoever else they work with, making a plan, executing the plan, and sticking with it. I understand that this argument didn't work for Cal Raleigh last year, but I'm here to try it again. And
Well,
that's why.
that's what I was going to say. The hard part is when we get to the end of the year in the AL and Aaron Judge has hit 55 home runs, is batting, 310, and,
Might be 330 by then. You just never know with him.
Like, it's going to be a hard argument against anybody else. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm at the point where I don't think I'll be fatigued at the level of impressiveness that hitters have.
He better be careful. I heard the Giants were about to call up Arson Judge. So you never know.
I will say this on that side of the MVP conversation. I do not think that, and this is specific for Shohei because nobody else does this, I do not think that being a really good pitcher and a mediocre hitter, mediocre relative to what an MVP hitter should be, not a league average, but
and to his own expectations, to
right.
be fair.
I don't think that makes you an MVP. Yeah. I think if you're a really good hitter and a solid pitcher, makes you an MVP. On the flip of that is, if you're going to win a Cy Young, I'm not giving you the MVP because you won a Cy Young and also hit.
1,000%.
I'll give you the MVP if you win a Cy Young and also are one of the best hitters in your league.
Well, stay tuned for the argument.
It's coming.
Pitchers winning MVPs and hitters winning. Oh, wait, they can't win Cy Youngs, Flax. Crazy concept. We'll leave you right there to think about that a little bit more. Flax, let's move into our final thoughts here outside of the fact that Shea Langeliers is my MVP to this point in the AL. Final thoughts this week. I know where you're going, but tell everybody how they're doing.
Denison baseball update. They won. They swept through their regional on 3 walk-off wins. Scored 5 runs in the 9th. I was on a plane silently going nuts. Watching as they... I never buy Wi-Fi on the plane, but I wasn't not going to watch Denison play. But they are hosting a super regional this coming weekend against Piedmont College. School I was also recruited by, but they did not have a
kid who played there too.
They did not have a computer science program, so I had to turn them down. Their loss.
I love it.
Yeah, but that's where they're at.
My final thought this week is the Washington Nationals officially have scored the most runs in baseball. Who would have thought? Not this guy. Not this guy. They have a 5-run lead against the New York Yankees, who are in second. All I have to say about that is Paul Taboni really going to pull me out of the stupor. This is great.
I do have one more thing relative to D3 baseball, and I tweeted about this. If you want to watch 2 teams, 2 heavyweights, go at each other this weekend, Johns Hopkins is hosting a super regional against a team called Claremont Mudd Scripps. Johns Hopkins has hit 100 home runs as a team this year. Claremont Mudd Scripps has hit 95. Johns Hopkins has potentially the smallest outfield dimensions.
I didn't know that.
In all of college baseball. It's going to be fireworks. No question in my mind. So, might be worth watching. You can stream it for free on the NCAA website. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be a good stream, but it's a stream, and you will get to see a lot of home runs. Almost definitely.
Will they also be yelling "Feed the trees"? Is that what's going to happen?
And it ain't trees; it's feed the street. I think there's streets behind the feed
there
the
is.
cars.
We both played there. There is. You're right. Either way, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed the episode today. As always, make sure you share the podcast with your family and friends. Streaming on your favorite platforms, Spotify, Apple, and, of course, YouTube. Come say hi to us on socials. Flax is always there and always around, as I remind him every single day. Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, frankly, wherever you digest content. But as always, we appreciate you guys so much for listening to the pod. Have a great week.